Hi everyone, it is Andy here. Welcome to the Crypto Wealth Cafe, brought to you by Dacxi, powering serious crypto wealth for serious crypto wealth investors. It is time for our weekly look at the market. So it's time to do what we always do at the beginning of the show: put the kettle on, make yourself a nice stimulating cup of coffee, a nice relaxing cup of tea, or if it's dark, please do feel free to have a nice dram of whiskey, glass of wine, whatever tickles your fancy. Let's get on with it, shall we? So if we start over here at coin market cap, you can see, well, it's not good. Bitcoin is down to around 38,100. Ethereum down to 2,800. So quite a steep drop, really, just in the last 24 hours. And I mean, it's kind of just been reflected in the global share market indexes as well. So no real surprise there, but, not always fun to see. So if we look at this on the Bitcoin chart, and we can see here it is here, quite a steep fall from, I think we got to almost 41,000 yesterday, and then boom, just gave it all away, straight back down, got down to 37,000 at one point, and now just staging a minimal recovery in the next daily candle. So yeah, not much fun, really. We've just kind of been really stuck in this range that we keep talking about. We're a little bit up, then we're a little bit down, a lot up, a lot down, but really struggling to make any kind of headway up or down. So if let's just have a quick look at, I guess, the kind of the wider macro charts. We'll use my old mate Dave the Wave. He's a very good technical analyst, so he's always good at putting things into perspective. So this chart just shows that we're halfway to the next Bitcoin halving. So this is the first Bitcoin halving, and this was the most recent Bitcoin halving, and this will be the next one. So we're pretty much smack bang just in the middle, and of course, interestingly, we're smack bang in the middle of the channel as well. The median of the channel is right here, which is where we are. So I guess it's another way of saying we are where we should be, but also Bitcoin is struggling to pick a direction. So interesting. Here's another one of Dave's charts. So this one, again, still just kind of in this zone. We're building up in this triangle here, and that is still where we are. And so you can see that Bitcoin's kind of coiling like a spring, and we're going to break this triangle either down or up. Could be explosive, and we're kind of getting to the business end here. So Dave says, if we do get a Bitcoin move down comparable to the last two kind of steep crashes, which was back here and here, that could either take us, down here or down here, but would really take us into the 25k region, and also into this here, the shaded area, which of course is the mythical Bitcoin buy zone at the bottom of the channel. So if we look at that on the wider chart, we can see that much more clearly. This is the buy zone down here. Here's our triangle that we're waiting to resolve. So I don't know. I mean, as you will have noticed, and as we keep talking about, it's a tough time in the world. It is a tough time in the world. There's no getting around that. It's volatile across all markets. Geopolitical stage is volatile as well. And, global economies are slightly, I don't know, are they on the brink of recessions? They probably are. So, it doesn't necessarily bode well in the short term. So it doesn't necessarily mean we will get a steep fall back into the buy zone. If we do, I don't really see it as a bad thing either. and talked about this before, but if we zoom out, you can see that anytime Bitcoin is in this buy zone, that has historically been a really excellent time to buy Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is comparatively cheap when it's down here. When it's up here at the top of the channel, all-time highs, that's a less you get less value for your Bitcoin up here. It will still appreciate over time, of course, but if you're buying down in the buy zone, man, that's a good thing. So I guess it's a roundabout way of saying, yeah, don't worry too much. I mean, on the long term, I think everything will be fine. But yeah, there is perhaps a risk of some more extreme volatility ahead as global markets react to the fairly fragile global economic situation that we all find ourselves in. And it's not just Bitcoin. I mean, look, this is the Tesla chart. Tesla, very steep drop yesterday. Now, I think the reason for that is really what Elon is doing in terms of buying Twitter. So Tesla investors, not necessarily too impressed by what Elon is doing. I mean, they've been here before. Elon is he's a volatile guy. He does his own thing, and that has sometimes been reflected in the Tesla price. So, I mean, I wouldn't worry if you're a Tesla investor. I'm sure this will recover once, Elon starts to do his thing at Twitter. But yeah, it's just crazy times. So I guess it's not also that. It's just that, all tech stocks, and I would say Tesla perhaps can qualify as a tech stock. Tech stocks have had a difficult time this year, and Bitcoin at the moment is really correlated to tech stocks. So, I mean, that won't happen forever. So, Michael Saylor was talking about how Bitcoin should be viewed as the ultimate risk-off asset, and it's just going to take a while for the traders and technocrats who control the market trading of Bitcoin to recognize that. But in the meantime, it's kind of a tug of war, a push and pull between them, is what Michael Saylor says. And so Samson Mow puts this into perspective. He says, Bitcoin will trade like a tech stock and a risk-on asset until one day it suddenly it doesn't. And then it will be too late for the technocrats and traders to take any meaningful position, because Bitcoin will be starting to run away with them. Do you agree with that perspective? I think there's some validity to it. But in the meantime, Elon Musk has gone and bought Twitter. About 44 billion he paid for it, something like that. He's got backers. It's not all his own money, but a significant amount of it is his own money. I think he's kind of collateralized that or borrowed it against his Tesla stock. So that's one reason why Tesla investors have taken a slightly dim view, just in the short term at least. But it's interesting what Elon is doing. And I mean, I've talked here on the Crypto Wealth Cafe before of my love for the Twitter platform, shall we say. I think Twitter is an incredibly how to explain it. It is the digital town square. That's what Elon calls it, and I think that is a great way of explaining Twitter. Let's read what Elon has to say. He says that free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. I think that is it in a nutshell, right? Said Elon. He also says, I want to make Twitter better than ever by enhancing the product with new features, make the algorithms open source to increase trust, defeat the spam bots, and authenticate all humans. Twitter has tremendous potential, and I look forward to working with the company and the community of users to unlock it. So incredible. I mean, who would have thought that Elon would just go and buy Twitter, which is not a huge social network by any standards compared to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Twitter's user base is much, much smaller. But people who don't use Twitter, they don't kind of understand that it is really this digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. I think that's a great way of putting it, Elon. And, the free speech thing, I don't know, that's a very complicated issue. Not going to get into that particular rabbit hole today, but I do think it's interesting that Elon recognizes the promise and potential of Twitter and is prepared to put his money where his mouth is, put his personal skin in the game by going out and buying the bloody thing. Incredible stuff. So, yeah. Now, interestingly, the people at Twitter, as you can imagine, the rank and file Twitter employees, I don't think they're very impressed. They're not impressed. And I thought this was interesting. You can see that, the Twitter employees, very, very heavily Democrat, very heavily left-leaning. It's not to say that Elon isn't necessarily, but I think by Elon going on about this free speech, and he talks about anti-woke and all that stuff, which does tend to get the Democrats a little bit worked up, shall we say. So the reason I bring this up is I think there's something interesting happening in politics at the moment as well. 58% of, and this is in the US, of course, 58% of US voters are open to backing an independent candidate if they're faced again with Biden and Trump. I mean, can you imagine Americans going to the next election and having to pick between Biden and Trump? It's just, I hope you don't mind my saying so, but I think that would be a terrible choice of candidates for both sides. And I think it's kind of the problem with modern Western democracies, is they often do come down to this kind of binary choice between two candidates, left and right, but often they're not even too far away from each other sometimes. But yeah, I think there's there's room for more. And so, we talk about an independent candidate. It'd be great to see an independent candidate in the US, and perhaps that could be Andrew Yang. He's run before, of course, but he's running again as an independent, and he's it's called the Forward Party. So I think you have to look more into it, but he's framing it not as left and not as right, but forward, picking and choosing perhaps the best policy positions from both sides, and trying to avoid getting bogged down into kind of, what I would see as kind of unnecessary culture war debates, things like, I'm not going to get into it, but you know what I mean. It's easy kind of religion and race baiting and identity politics, abortion, all that kind of stuff, which politicians really just use in a cynical fashion to fire up the worst parts of their supporters, in my view. So I guess what I'm saying is, crypto is really capturing the zeitgeist in quite an intriguing new way, and really starting to disrupt not just the financial system, but also politics. Even, it probably plays into a little bit with Elon's thinking as well, because, crypto libertarian views, very vocal in their support of free speech, of course. But I think what you're going to find is people are so disillusioned with modern politics that you might see the rise of what they call the single issue voter. And I love that Andrew Yang is supporting this idea with Bitcoin being the idea being that, and let's use the US as an example, this whatever percentage of the population holding crypto, and it is growing fast. That is becoming an extremely powerful voting bloc, and a lot of them could be convinced to become single issue voters, I think. And by that I just mean, whatever party or candidate decides to back Bitcoin and crypto the hardest will get those votes. It's as simple as that. It makes sense to me. If I can see myself being a Bitcoin single issue voter in a year or two. So just something to think about. Now back to Elon and buying Twitter. So Jack Dorsey, who of course I guess was the original founder of Twitter and has been CEO off and on for most of Twitter's life, and Jack of course is a hardcore Bitcoiner himself. So he says, I'm happy Twitter will continue to serve the public conversation around the world and into the stars. It's quite an interesting turn of phrase. And look, he's publicly backed Elon's takeover of Twitter. It wouldn't have happened without Mr. Dorsey's endorsement, and I think Jack stands to make around $950 million out of Elon's buyout as well. So he's done all right with that. That'll give him a little bit of cash to buy the Bitcoin dip. So good on Jack. But yeah, just this turn of phrase, around the world and into the stars. So Raoul Pal has picked up on this as well, and he says, my theory is that Elon will try to run Twitter from satellites with no control by any government, as SpaceX sits above local internet and is hard to censor, as Ukraine has shown. The world is changing fast. Quite a lot in this tweet, really, if you think about it, and I think there's something to it. The reason I think that is obviously, Elon doesn't do these things without thinking several steps ahead. He's a smart guy. While he does, it seems sometimes that he's reacting from, illogical, emotional positions. I think that's an unfair characterization of just how far Elon thinks these things through. So it doesn't always get it right, but I don't think he would just go and buy Twitter willy-nilly and think, I can just, we can fix free speech, because it doesn't work like that. Trying to moderate free speech on a contemporary modern social media platform like Twitter, that's one of the hardest things in the world to do. But that aside, so fascinating to consider that perhaps he would try and run it essentially from the Starlink satellite system, and effectively become a kind of independent internet platform. Fascinating to think about. The world is definitely changing fast around the world and into the stars. Look what Elon tweeted today. So he says, per aspera ad astra, which I believe is Latin. If we translate that, it says, through difficulties to the stars. So we might be reading too much into this because, of course, Elon, he's got all these different, he's got SpaceX and the satellite business, so he does tend to talk about the stars. But it's just interesting timing that he's talking about this while all the Twitter stuff is going on. I think the key point here is the world is changing fast. So, we've talked before on this show about the exponential age and what happens when these censorship-resistant blockchain networks start to hit the vertical part of their S-curve as, Bitcoin and Ethereum adoption continues at pace, and that kind of crypto zeitgeist begins to take root in the global population, and people start to figure this stuff out. So I think the world is changing fast is my takeaway there. All right, let's finish off. We'll just see if there's any good news happening in the world in the Bitcoin space. Wall Street Journal reports that Fidelity is adding Bitcoin as an option for 401k plans later this year. Fidelity being the first major retirement plan provider to do so. I think Fidelity is one of the biggest as well. Fidelity Investments plans to allow investors to put a Bitcoin account in their 401k. This will happen later this year, and the 23,000 companies that use Fidelity to administer their retirement plans will have the option to put Bitcoin on the menu. So, this is kind of gone under the radar, but I think that's pretty good news, pretty big news. And again, just shows that we talk about the crypto zeitgeist and, Bitcoin just getting its tentacles in everywhere. The mainstream of financial system is being infiltrated by Bitcoin as Bitcoin goes legit. And, it happens slowly and then suddenly, what happens next? Maybe we'll get a Bitcoin spot ETF in the US next year. We thought we were going to get one, or we thought we were going to get 2 or 3 actually this week in Australia, and Australia is about to become the 8th country to approve a spot-based a Bitcoin ETF. So there's the Cosmos Bitcoin ETF, and then there's 21 shares ETF as well. They're all due to go live today, but there's been a delay, failure to launch crypto ETFs hit listing, snag reports the Australian Financial Review. So they don't quite say exactly what's going on, but the fund managers, Cosmos Asset Management and ETF Securities, had expected to launch today on Wednesday after a frustrating 5-month wait, but in a communication to the market on Tuesday afternoon, CBOE Australia confirmed that the Cosmos Purpose Bitcoin Access ETF would not begin trading on Wednesday. And the reason is here. So the blame for the delay was placed on a service provider downstream who needs more time to support the trade of the products. And Cosmos and ETF Securities declined to name or even describe the service provider, but it is understood the entity that's holding up trade for both firms is a prime broker whose approval is required in order for the market maker to ensure smooth operation of the market. So someone didn't have their ducks in a row, but I think it's just going to be an annoying delay of perhaps a few days. Who knows, perhaps, but I think we'll see those Australian spot ETFs go live next week, in which case, the Australian Financial Review said there were $1 billion expected to flow into Australia's first Bitcoin ETF when it lists next week. So, yeah, be something to keep an eye on. I think we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed your coffee, your tea, your whiskey, or your wine here on the Crypto Wealth Cafe. Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, team. Bye for now.